How's it going, my fellow snail sufferers? It's your missile guy. Today I've decided to make my entry into the topic of 5th generation, which I have heavily avoided due to how difficult it is to gather correct information on, as well as the extreme toxicity revolving around 5th generation in general. But with a lot of my modern missiles involving 5th generation aircrafts, I think it's only fair that I test the waters with my typical format with an aircraft I'm rather familiar with. With that being said, let's get on with my usual disclaimer. As you can hear, I am human and I'm capable of making mistakes, especially revolving around 5th generation and the F-22, which is more classified than the Grand Theft Auto 6 development timeline. Like my missile videos in this topic, this is going to be going over each block variant of the F-22 Raptor. Originally, it was just going to be a general expectations, but I decided, hey, let's do the block variants instead. So if you guys enjoyed this video, let me know below. If you do, I'll start making more 5th generation videos. Anyways, let's get on with the video. Well, what type of question is this? Everyone knows what the F-22 is, but for those who don't somehow, the F-22 traces back all the way to the 80s with the Advanced Tactical Fighter program with the goal of countering next-generation Soviet fighters and eventually replacing the legendary F-15. The goal was to create a stealthy, supersonic air superiority fighter that could totally dominate the airspace with little to no assistance. The Air Force would formally kick things off in 1984 with a statement of operational needs, followed by requirements in 1987. Between this time, multiple companies had attempted to propose aircrafts, but the list was narrowed down to 2 companies, Lockheed Martin with Boeing and General Dynamics, and Northrop with McDonnell Douglas. Each team would build prototypes that would compete with Lockheed's prototype known as the YF-22 and the legendary YF-23 Black Widow. Surprisingly, the YF-23 was considered the more advanced airframe in a lot of regards. It was said to have a better overall range, a higher service ceiling, and due to this design, potentially even stealthier than the F-22. However, this is a widely argued figure, so let me know what you think about that below. However, during flight demos, the YF-22 would pull off extremely aggressive maneuvers and impressive missile launches, and combined with Lockheed's overall track record, the YF-22 would win the contract. One major factor the YF-22 had was its use of thrust vectoring. The F-22 uses a 2D thrust vectoring system, giving even more aggressive maneuverability and control, while the YF-23 lacked thrust vectoring entirely. Fast forward to December 2005, 14 years and 8 months after winning the contract, the F-22 Raptor would officially be adopted into US service. Alright, so once the Raptor actually entered service in December 2005, the very first jets off the line were what the Air Force calls the Block 10. These were pretty much a bare-bones air superiority package, air-to-air only, external fuel tanks and AMRAAM carriage, no real ground attack capability worth mentioning yet. However, this is where things get a little messy for research purposes, because pretty much none of these jets exist anymore in their original Block 10 form. Under something called the Common Configuration Plan, the Air Force went back and upgraded somewhere around 30 to 37 of these early jets, up to the Block 20 standard, and these sources disagree on an exact number, so don't quote me on that. Just keeping the older, less reliable central processor as the one holdover. So when you hear people talk about Block 10 Raptors today, they usually mean these hybrid jets. Block 20 electronics bolted onto the Block 10 hardware, still flying as the trainer fleet. What this means for War Thunder, if we do ever get a Raptor in game, and that's a big if, this is exactly the kind of jet Gaijin would probably use for balance purposes. An early weapons limited Block 10 to 20 hybrid rather than the missile truck the Air Force actually flies today. From around 2007 onward, new production shifted to the Block 20 standard, running what's called Increment 2 hardware and software. This is the update that actually made the Raptor useful for more than just air superiority. Supersonic release of GPS-guided JDAMs got added, the E-120C got a performance bump, and a lot of the early reliability headaches from the Block 10 had gotten sorted out. Now here's a myth I wanted to bust real quick, because I see a lot of this in the comment sections. People assume Block 20 Raptors are just as combat capable as newer jets, just older. That's not technically true. Block 20s are maintained purely as training and test airframes. They don't carry the modern missiles, they don't have modern comm suits, and Air Force leadership has flat out said they will never be part of the combat force. In fact, the Air Force had tried multiple times, including as recently as fiscal year 25 and fiscal year 26 budget requests, to retire the roughly 32 remaining Block 20s outright, and Congress has blocked it every single time, pending a cost analysis on whether it's worth upgrading them to the Block 30 standard instead. What this means for War Thunder, honestly, this could be a good illustration of why just adding the F-22 is way more complicated than people think. Even with the real Raptor's fleet, there's a training tier and a combat tier, and Gaijin would have to pick one for balancing within the game. Again, Gaijin isn't the best at making competent decisions. The F-22 Block 30 and 35 is the block that actually matters if you're talking about the Raptor as a weapon. The Block 30 and 35 aircraft make up a bulk of roughly 143 combat-coded jets in the fleet today. That number does move around depending on the year and the source, so treat it as a rough ballpark. The big hardware jump here is the APG-77V1 ACER radar, which multiple outlets describe as an exclusive to the Block 30 and 35 airframes, giving noticeably better air-to-ground modes like synthetic aperture ground mapping alongside the air-to-air performance. On the software side, you've got a string of increments layered on top. Increment 3.1 landed around 2011 and brought the SAR ground mapping capability along with small diameter bomb integration. Increment 3.2A followed the electronic protection upgrades and a receive-only version of Link 16. And then the big one, Increment 3.2B, finally got the Raptor onto the AIM-9X Sidewinder and the AIM-120D AMRAAM, plus automatic ground collision avoidance. The 3.2B rollout was a long process too. Developmental testing kicked off in November 2017, and the Air Force didn't finish fielding it until around 2019. Quick side note, while we're here, early 2000s planning documents actually laid out a Block 40 standard beyond this, with things like a proper Wild Weezer seed roll and side-locking radar arrays for the ISR work. None of that ever happened though, as far as we know. Production never actually started, and the whole modernization roadmap got compressed into what eventually became Increment 3.2. Now here's where I have to give you the I'm not fully sure disclaimer I promised in the intro. Some older program documentations from around 2008 draws an actual hardware line between the Block 30 and 35, suggesting Block 30 airframes were the ones that originally got 3.1, and Block 35 airframes were slated for Increment 3.2, almost like two separate subclasses. However, pretty much all of the current reporting I could find just lumps them together as the Block 30 and 35 as one combined combat standard, with no clear modern source spelling out a hardware difference between the two. So take your pick. Either there's a subtle structural difference between a 30 and a 35 airframe that just isn't public anymore, or the distinction basically faded away once the whole fleet got brought up to a common combat standard. I couldn't find a source recent enough to settle it either way, so if you know, drop it in the comments. What this means for War Thunder, if the Raptor ever shows up, this is realistically the one you'd want. This would have the AIM-9X off-board sight capability, as well as the AIM-120D for range, and an ASAR radar that would honestly outclass a lot of things that currently may be in game, if you don't include its slightly lacking deflection angle. And this brings us to right now, because the Raptor is actually getting its biggest visible upgrade since it entered service, and it's happening in real time as I'm making this video. Since around 2023 and 2024, F-22s have been spotted testing something called the Low Drag Tank and Pylon System, or LDTP, stealth-shaped external fuel tanks and pylons, designed to extend the Raptor's range without completely wrecking its radar signature the way a normal external tank would. Alongside that, jets have also been photographed carrying underwing pods that are widely believed to be an infrared search and track system, or IRST, which is a passive sensor meant to help the Raptor spot other stealth aircrafts without ever turning its own radar on. Lockheed Martin actually put a name to the whole new package at the 2026 AFA Warfare, calling it the Raptor 2.0. However, I'm treating that more as a press and marketing label right now, rather than a confirmed official Air Force program name, so don't be shocked if the actual acquisition program has a much more boring official designation buried in a budget document somewhere. On top of the tanks and the IRST, the fiscal year 26 budget also funds development of a proper helmet-mounted display queuing system, something the Raptor has never had despite the F-35 and upgraded F-16s having one for years, plus a completely new infrared defensive system for a missile launch warning. All of this is explicitly framed as the bridge to keep the Raptor relevant through the 2030s until the F-47 shows up in real numbers. What this means for War Thunder, well, this is stuff that basically is never going to make it into the game anytime soon. We are talking about active flight test programs from this year. If Gaijin ever does add a Raptor, it's going to be some flavor of the Block 30 and 35 combat standard we just covered, not this bleeding edge stuff with all these sweet upgrades. So stepping back from the real world stuff for a second, where does this leave us for War Thunder? Right now, we're kind of sitting at a 4.5 generation jam with Rafales, Typhoons, the F-15C, GE, those kind of jets. And Gaijins themselves have confirmed 5th gen aircrafts are coming at some point down the line. However, there's basically zero confirmed timeline after the fact. A lot of speculation I see ranges anywhere from the next update to years away, and a big chunk of people I see talking about the F-22 straight up doubts the F-22 will be added correctly and it's going to be lacking a lot of features. And honestly, after going through all these blocks with you, I think that skepticism is somewhat fair, because even if Gaijin wanted to add the Raptor tomorrow, which black would they even pick? Would they pick a Block 20 trainer for balance reasons, or the Block 30 and 35? That would be a problem for the current ARB meta. And if you guys are interested in a video just about stealth in general and how it'll affect War Thunder, I could make something like that. Just let me know down below. It wouldn't be about a jet specifically, it would just be kind of around the topic of 5th gen. Anyways, that's all I have for you, my fellow snail sufferers. If you found this one interesting, consider leaving a like, hyping the video, or if you wish to support the channel even further, hit that like button and sub button. It's the best free way to support my channel, and we recently hit 4,000 subs. We're currently at 4,100, which is fucking crazy. Anyways, there you have it, my fellow snail sufferers. This is your missile guy, and I hope to see you in the next one.